Welcome back, Space Coast Daily TV, live and on location here in Palm Bay with District 53 State Representatives Randy Fine, who's going to give us an update now on issues that are important to Brevardians here on the Space Coast. Randy, thanks very much for joining us.
Happy to be here.
Great to see you and the boys having some fun this summer. I know you've been working extremely hard, but it's great to see you and your family enjoying the parks.
Yeah, well, we're having a good time. I mean, I'm lucky I don't have a primary this year, so we've been taking real advantage of that. And, you know, there'll be plenty of time for politics once the kids go back to school.
That's right. Priorities first.
That's right.
Great. Family first, as we do on the Space Coast. Well, Randy, incredible times here on the Space Coast. Tell us the most important things that you're working for Brevardians here in District 53.
Well, right now we're in the off season, so it's not the time for bills and those kinds of things. We'll get to that after the election. We just had a great session and then a couple of special sessions, but there are some issues that I'm working on right now. One of which is I was trying to stop a $50 million unnecessary tax increase that the school board is proposing to put on Brevard County residents. Folks owning a $500,000 home would have to pay $450 more in taxes a year. Someone with a $300,000 home would have to pay $250 more a year. Trying to stop that. Also looking at this $30 million grift.
Let me just stop you there.
Sure.
So the $50 million, that would be used for what? And what is the situation with that bill at this present time?
Well, they could use it for whatever they want. They had some claims for the reason that they needed it, but unfortunately none of the statements were true. And that's why I got involved. I chair the committee that sets the budget for Brevard's government school system, and they got a record amount of funding this year, both for their system and per student. But as politicians tend to do, they said, oh no, it's not enough, we're starving, we're starving, we're starving. So in the midst of crazy inflation where so many people are having trouble filling their cars with gas, these politicians thought it was a good idea to throw a $50 million tax increase on the ballot. And so I put out a letter saying these are lies. Their real problem at Brevard government schools is that parents are leaving the system. Over the last 5 years, enrollment in Brevard government schools has gone down, despite the fact our population has gone up. What's happening is that parents are homeschooling, sending their children to charter schools, using Florida virtual school, taking advantage of private school vouchers. They're basically fleeing the Brevard government school system for other options. And instead of trying to fix that problem and get those kids back and thus increase their funding that way, they're simply proposing to put a tax on everybody.
In your opinion, your view, and your experience, what's causing people to leave the school system?
Well, they're not focused on educating kids. It just came out that their grade went from an A to a B. A huge number of schools dropped their grades. When all they want to talk about is mask mandates and critical race theory and letting boys play girls' sports and boys go on the girls' soccer team and in the bathroom and having pornographic books in the libraries. There's no discussion of how do we teach math and how do we teach reading. These school systems have turned into these indoctrination factories, not about education anymore. And so I think that we're seeing that, and I think that's why parents are leaving.
So the ask of the $50 million, is that on the table? Is it off the table? Where is it?
Well, they passed it, and then they asked the Brevard County Commission to put it on the ballot. They sort of snuck it through in a fairly unethical way. They put it on a consent agenda on a meeting about zoning. The public got no opportunity to stand up and talk about it before the commission. And so Commissioner Tabaya actually asked that they pull it off. I don't know where that's going to go, but I felt it was important to point out the dishonesty of the school board in their justification for that tax increase.
Okay. Tell us about your opinion currently on the progress that's being made with the lagoon, and what can we expect going forward?
Well, we're making progress. It's very slow. We've gotten funding. And obviously, I got $900,000 in dedicated funding for the lagoon. Myself, my colleagues got other funding as well. So we've gotten millions of dollars in state funding. Unfortunately, I think the result of that is the politicians are taking some of that Indian River Lagoon eligible money and choosing to spend it on other things. And I think that puts us in a really difficult position in going to Tallahassee and trying to get money to solve this local problem.
What's an example of that?
Well, I think everyone's talking about this $30 million payout to this developer. So I think people are starting to hear that a Miami developer wants to build a hotel in Brevard County. Well, lots of people want to build hotels in Brevard County. They just build them. This guy has asked for a $30 million payoff from the county before he'll get the financing to build his hotel. And despite basically everyone opposing it, 3 politicians chose to give him that $30 million. But what's terrible is that $30 million is from Indian River Lagoon eligible funds. So these politicians have decided to take $30 million away from fixing the problems in the Indian River Lagoon, whether it's septic to sewer, sewer plant upgrades, stormwater issues, dredging, whatever. They've chosen to take $30 million from the Indian River Lagoon and give it to a hotel developer to build a hotel that no one seems to want.
So what is Randy Fine going to do about that? What pressure do you plan to apply, and what have you done to discourage this gift?
Well, I told the county commission in advance of the vote, I said, look, you're coming to me every year and asking you to get you millions of dollars for the Indian River Lagoon, and your argument is you don't have enough money. And I make that argument quite convincingly. I've gotten over $4 million myself for the Indian River Lagoon the last 3 years, in addition to the $60 million we got Governor DeSantis to announce last year. So a lot of money coming in. It will be impossible for me to make the argument that you need the money if you've got $30 million to give to a developer. So I had $900,000 of requests in right now for a special local grants program that we're going to be deciding next month. And I pulled them. I pulled them yesterday. I said, I cannot in good conscience ask the state to give money when you're going to turn around and give that money to a hotel developer.
Yeah, I'm here with Randy Fine, Representative District 53, explaining the result of yesterday's vote on the county commissioners. Commissioners Pritchett, Kurt Smith, and Christine Zonka voted in favor of a $30 million gift of out-of-bed tax funds here on the Space Coast. Commissioner Tobias voting against it. But so that's effectively taken $30 million potentially used for the lagoon, and also $900,000. So you're talking $31 million that could have been used technically for the lagoon.
Well, I don't know that I would have gotten the $900,000. I can't guarantee I would have been successful. But if I would have been successful, yeah, it would be $31 million.
Mm-hmm. Why do you think this resonated so much with the public here in Brevard County? I mean, we covered a lot of news about this regarding this issue. Why do you think that resonated so much now with the way conditions are here on Brevard County with the public?
Well, because the county is booming. And the best example I can give on this is there's another transfer. The argument the developer made apparently is it's going to be this transformational project. It'll transform that area of the county. Well, there's another transformational project coming to the county, the Margaritaville project in Melbourne. They haven't asked for a penny. Not a penny from the county, not a penny from the state, not a penny from the city. And so it just smells bad when you see all of this development going on in the county, and a private developer who's not even from here says, I need a $30 million check in order to build a hotel in your county. And what's remarkable is everyone disagrees with this apparently locally. Socialists who hate my guts are as mad about this as I am. The entire local tourism community opposed this. And you would think if it was good for tourism, the Tourist Development Council would have wanted it. And my understanding is they almost unanimously opposed it. And these are the people who are looking out for tourism. So if the people in charge of tourism don't want it, if conservatives don't want it, if liberals don't want it, everyone wants the Indian River Lagoon. It just looks terrible. And it reeks of corruption, and I find it very disturbing, and it's going to have real effects. I can't go to Tallahassee and get money for Brevard County to help the Indian River Lagoon when they turn around and take $30 million of it and give it to a developer. I just can't make that sale.
At the meeting yesterday, the county commission meeting, Commissioner Kurt Smith and Commissioner Pritchett made particular comment regarding economic development and how that this project was good for economic development of Brevard County, therefore warranting the $30 million in marketing money. What do you say about that?
Well, I don't think the purpose of the tourist development tax is economic development. And I also think it's not fair. You're creating winners and losers. So the Margaritaville doesn't get $30 million, but they have to compete with this other hotel that does get $30 million. All the hotels that are already around there gets no money. It creates a government-sanctioned advantage for one operator. And I think they're just wrong. I mean, look, the problem is you don't have any real business people who sit on the county commission. A real business person would tell you, which is what I used to do, if you can't get a project funded without government support, then it's not a good project. This is not an example. A lot of times the politicians will say, hey, we have to give $30 million or they'll build this somewhere else. So that's the argument. We want the jobs here, so we're going to subsidize them. It's still a bad argument. This is an instance where it's not as though they're going to build this here or somewhere else. It's they're going to build this here or not at all. And when they're saying we can't do this without taxpayer support, it means it's a bad idea. It's a bad business. And it is not right for the taxpayer to subsidize a hotel. There are much better uses for this money. And look, as a guy who fights for the little guy, I'm going to stand up and I'm going to say something about it.
Clearly, a clear view there from Representative Randy Fine. We're here on social media, of course, with you, Randy, talking to our audience on Space Ghost Daily. We're on social media. We couldn't help but follow the conversation between you and Milo Zonka on social media the last couple of days. What was that all about?
Well, it was somewhat disturbing. I announced a couple days ago that I was disappointed in this decision, and Mr. Zonka sent a pretty nasty email to me and a bunch of my colleagues about it. I just deleted it. I get a lot of nasty emails every day. But yesterday on social media, and anyone can go and find it, after Admiral Wayne Justice agreed with me, who's on the Port Commission. Again, you would think a port commissioner, if this was a good idea, would support the idea. He agreed. Zonka went on and sort of excoriated me in very personal terms. And that's okay. People are allowed. But I wrote him back. Milo Zonka has a reputation of taking jobs after votes. He did it a number of years ago. He put in place a deal that we found to be pretty sleazy in Palm Bay, a trash deal with Waste Management. And once he was off the council, he took a job with Waste Management, sort of as skeevy as it gets in politics. So I asked after this very personal attack, I said, I don't really understand why you're doing this. Is this because you're getting paid by these people, or, have they offered you a job? And he wouldn't answer the question. He just attacked again. So I asked the question a second time and he wouldn't answer it. So I asked the question a third time and he wouldn't answer it. Now, I don't know whether the husband of a commissioner is getting paid right now to lobby or whether he's been promised something in the future, but it sure does look bad. And again, the whole thing just looks bad.
Going forward then, what other methods do you have in your arsenal in order to prevent, in your view, tax giveaways like this, and what do you plan to do about this issue going forward, working with the county commission? Because obviously you need to do that for the betterment of Brevard County.
Sure, and look, John Tobias is my next door neighbor, and he right in the office next door, and he and I work together on things all of the time, and I try to work with the county commission when I can. But this misuse of TDC money has been an issue I have dealt with for years. I actually filed a bill that explicitly said they could spend money on the Indian River Lagoon. I think one of the things that comes out of this, and this will be discussions that I have with my colleagues, are do we have appropriate local lobbying rules and ethics rules and gift rules? So things are very clear at the state level. I can't take a bottle of water from someone who employs a lobbyist, let alone a gift. And all lobbyists have to register, and there's a whole lot of transparency. So yes, there are a lot of lobbyists involved in Tallahassee, but you can generally learn about it. In this instance, we saw there's apparently unregistered lobbying going on in Brevard County, and I think we need to really take a look at is everything being done above board and in a transparent way. I can't reverse this $30 million. I don't have that power. But what I can do is what I have done, which is said, look, you can't ask me to go get money for you when you're wasting money on this stuff.
At a time when all arms are needed on the pump here in Brevard County to get necessary funds to clean up this lagoon, this is a very challenging subject here for sure. Now then, the hoteliers in Brevard County have sort of declared, they had a court report at the county commission meeting, that they are looking for legal advice whether to pursue a lawsuit. Where do you see that going?
Well, I know a lot about the tourist development tax statute. Like I said, I amended it a few years ago when the county commission basically said, well, we have to spend money on goofy things because we can't spend it on the Indian River Lagoon. So I got that explicitly changed. And I'm not a lawyer and I'm not a judge, but my reading of the statute makes it pretty clear this is not legal. This is not an appropriate use of the tourist development tax.
There it is, folks. Randy Fine's update. Any other issues? Obviously, this is a hot one. What other issues facing Brevard County? We talked about the schools, the lagoon, the tourist tax. In your mind, going forward into the next session, what do you hope to accomplish?
Well, should I get reelected in the fall for my fourth and final term, I think you'll see us continue to work on water issues. I think that's a big one. It's going to remain a big one for years. I think you'll see us to continue to work on education. I mean, we've made really great strides forward on school choice and trying to tamp down on this woke ideology in schools. And I also think you'll see us continue to work on ethics as well. So I think there's a lot of things that we will be working on next year. And look, we'll have to see what condition the economy is in. With this record Biden inflation and mortgage rates where they are, the world could be in a very different place when we meet in March of next year than it is right now in July of 2022. So we're a long time off, but right now my focus is continuing to provide great constituent service. We are, while I canceled the $900,000 of requests for Brevard County, part of the reason I did that is we've put in about a dozen other requests totaling about $6 million. And I won't get funding for all of those. So I sort of said, look, let's let that money that we can get go to those more worthy causes. But trying to secure those dollars for those folks, and then just getting ready to have a great legislative session next year.
Talk about the insurance challenges at the moment. Let's focus on that a little bit. What's the progress being made there, and can the people expect some relief?
Well, maybe, but it takes a long time for this stuff to filter through the system. So we passed a bill, which I do think will have an impact. I don't know that it has an impact on this year's rates, but maybe next year. The problem we have in insurance, people think, oh, the rates are going up, the insurance companies must be making a ton of money. It's not true. In fact, insurance companies are going out of business, they're going bankrupt, and they're leaving the state, despite the fact that rates are going up. The problem we have is rates are driven by claims. And in Florida, the number of claims has gone up, and the cost of claims has gone up. Now, look, if you're filing a legitimate claim, we want you to be paid, and that's absolutely important. But I never knew we had so much hail in Brevard County and across the state. Apparently it hails every day, all the time, because these hailstorms cause people to need roofs. And you've had companies go out and tell people, I can get you a free roof. The roof isn't free. Everyone else pays for the roof. And so there are thousands, tens of thousands of these free roofs that now have to be paid for by everybody else. The other issue is claims are not being resolved, and then litigation happens. And once that $20,000 claim goes to court, it becomes a $60,000 claim with a lot of issues to lawyers. And so we have to try to get legal fees out of the system. We have to try to get claims reduced where they're not legit. We want legitimate claims to be paid and paid quickly. And those rates will be what they will be. But the boosting for legal fees and the boosting for these free roofs, that's really causing a huge problem in the system. And it's everybody's fault. It's the insurance company's fault too. Because frankly, I had an insurance company lobbyist say, there's all this fraud, there's all this fraud, there's all this fraud. I said, so how many of these claims do you deny? They go, well, we end up settling 95% of them. Well, when they're paying the fraudulent claims, all they're doing is incenting more of them. So everyone is a problem in the system. The insurance companies, the attorneys, the fake roofing companies, everyone's causing problems. And we passed a bill last session to start to deal with some of these things, but it's going to take a while, and I'm sure we'll be working on it next session as well.
Record inflation nationwide, 9.2%. Big challenges for working people all across the Space Coast. And Representative Randy Fine doing what he can to help. For Randy Fine, I'm Giles Malone in Palm Bay for Space Coast Daily.